Write down what bothers you. You know, there's going to be things about life, about the current political situation, about the details of your personal life, your relationships with other people that bother you. Now, a million things could bother you, and some things do. Those are your problems. And your destiny is in your problems. And then I would also say, well, watch yourself for a couple of weeks and see what you're doing when what you're doing appears meaningful. Right? When your interest is gripped and you're compelled. Because when you're in the place where you are, when your interest is compelled and you're gripped, you're where you should be. And one of the things you want to learn is how to be there more. You have to kind of treat yourself like a stranger to figure that out because, well, as you said, you know, you haven't been able to find your path precisely. Well, that means you don't know who the hell you are. Well, that's what it means fundamentally. You know, you may know some things about yourself, but you don't know yourself as deeply as you might. You have to understand that there's a certain degree of arbitrary strangeness about you and about the things that will compel you and grip you. And you need to discover what those are. And paying attention can help. It's like, where am I when I think I'm where I should be? And what am I doing? And you can ask yourself that over a 2-week period or a 1-month period, like you're asking someone you don't know. Imagine 5 years from now. And I literally mean imagine this, okay? Imagine 5 years from now. Now, here's the deal. You can have what you want and you need, and you can be who you want to be. But you have to figure out what that is. That's the price you have to pay. So now you have to fantasize. It's like, okay, if I was who I would want to be, and if I had what I needed and I wanted, what would that look like? Write it down for 15 minutes. You're not going to get it right. Just sketch it out. And then you can do the opposite, which is, all right, now if I let my bad habits and inadequacies have the upper hand and order me in, what sort of hell could I occupy in 5 years? That's useful to know too, because that's a good way of specifying where you don't want to go. The first part of the exercise helps you specify where you do want to go. The second part helps you specify where you don't want to go. Then you have something to run away from and something to run toward, and that's good for maximizing motivation. And then the rest of the exercise helps people strategize. And so you might say, well, I don't exactly know who I want to be or where I want to be or what I want. And I would say, well, here's some hints. If your intimate relationship with what you wanted, what would it look like? If your friendships were constructed the way you wanted them to be, these are questions you have to ask yourself. What would that look like? If you were educated to the limits of your intelligence, what educational strategy would you have to pursue? What job or career would you want or need if you could have what you wanted or needed? How should you use your time outside of work? How would you take care of yourself mentally and physically? What services might you render to your family and your community if you could do it in the manner you wanted? And that's 7 different questions, to sort of differentiate your life. Man, it's worth spending a few days figuring that out. We did that with university students before they went to university, and it dropped their dropout rate 50%. 90 minutes of writing dropped their dropout rate 50% and raised their grade point average 35%. So you need a vision, man. You need a vision, and you can develop a vision by pursuing what's interesting to you. You can develop a vision by taking the problems that beset you seriously, and you can develop a vision by working with yourself to develop a vision. Let's say you love someone, maybe you have a friend, maybe it's your wife, maybe a child, and you really love this person, and you say to them, I really like to know what you want, and knowing that, maybe I can figure out how to help you. If you would let me know. You can ask yourself the same damn question. Imagine that you dared to assume that you were worth attending to, and that it would be okay if things worked out optimally for you in the best possible way. Just imagine for a moment that was okay. Well, then you could ask yourself, well, all right, what would that look like? That's an unbelievably useful exercise. That's a prayer, man. That's a prayer, fundamentally. And that's a prayer devoted towards the seeking of a revelation.
Perhaps you should also be positioning yourself for a lateral move.
into another job, for example, noting as you may, "This occupation is deadening my soul, and that is truly not for me. It is time to take the painstaking steps necessary to organize my CV and to engage in the difficult, demanding, and often unrewarding search for a new job. But you have to be successful only once." Maybe you can find something that pays better and is more interesting, and where you are working with people who not only fail to kill your spirit, but positively rejuvenate it. Maybe following the dictates of conscience is in fact the best possible plan that you have. At minimum, otherwise you have to live with your sense of self-betrayal and the knowledge that you put up with what you truly could not tolerate. Nothing about that is good. I might get fired. Well, prepare now to seek out and ready yourself for another job, hopefully better, or prepare yourself to go over your manager's head with a well-prepared and articulate argument. And do not begin by presuming that leaving your job, even involuntarily, is necessarily for the worst. "I am afraid to move." Well, of course you are, but afraid compared to what? Afraid in comparison to continuing in a job where the center of your being is at stake, where you become weaker, more contemptible, more bitter, and more prone to pressure and tyranny over the years. There are few choices in life where there is no risk on either side, and it is often necessary to contemplate the risks of staying as thoroughly as the risks of moving. I have seen many people move, sometimes after several years of strategizing, and end up in better shape, psychologically and pragmatically, after their time in the desert. Perhaps no one else would want me. Well, the rejection rate for new job applications is extraordinarily high. I tell my clients to assume 50.1, so their expectations are set properly. You are going to be passed over, in many cases, for many positions for which you are qualified. But that is rarely personal. It is, instead, a condition of existence, an inevitable consequence of somewhat arbitrary subjection to the ambivalent conditions of worth characterizing society. It is the consequence of the fact that CVs are easy to disseminate and difficult to process, that many jobs have unannounced internal candidates and so are just going through the motions, and that some companies keep a rolling stock of applicants in case they need to hire quickly. That is an actuarial problem, a statistical problem, a baseline problem, and not necessarily an indication that there is something specifically flawed about you. You must incorporate all that sustainingly pessimistic realism into your expectations so that you do not become unreasonably downhearted. 150 applications, carefully chosen, 3 to 5 interviews thereby acquired. That could be a mission of a year or more. That is much less than a lifetime of misery and downward trajectory. But it is not nothing. You need to fortify yourself for it, plan, and garner support from people who understand what you are up to and are realistically appraised of the difficulty and the options. Now, it may also be that you are lagging in the development of your skills and could improve your performance at work, so that your chances of being hired elsewhere are heightened. But there is no loss in that. You cannot effectively pronounce no in the presence of corrupt power when your options to move are non-existent. In consequence, you have a moral obligation to place yourself in a position of comparative strength and to do then what is necessary to capitalize on that strength. You may also have to think through worst-case situations and to discuss them with those who will be affected by your decisions. But it is once again worth realizing that staying where you should not be may be the true worst-case situation, one that drags you out and kills you slowly over decades. That is not a good death, even though it is slow, and there is very little in it that does not speak of the hopelessness that makes people age quickly and long for the cessation of career and, worse, life. That is no improvement. As the old and cruel cliche goes, if you must cut off a cat's tail, do not do it half an inch at a time. You may well be in for a few painful years of belated recognition of insufficiency and required to send out 4 or 5 or 10 job applications a week, knowing full well that the majority will be rejected with less than a second look. But you need to win the lottery only once, and a few years of difficulty with hope beat an entire dejected lifetime of a degenerating and oppressed career. And let us be clear, it is not a simple matter of hating your job because it requires you to wake up too early in the morning, or to drag yourself to work when it is too hot or cold or windy or dry, or when you are feeling low and want to curl up in bed. It is not a matter of frustration generated when you are called on to do things that are menial or necessary, such as emptying garbage cans, sweeping floors, cleaning bathrooms, or in any other manner taking your lowly but well-deserved place at the bottom of the hierarchy of competence, even of seniority. Resentment generated by such necessary work is most often merely ingratitude, inability to accept a lowly place at the beginning, unwillingness to adopt the position of the fool, or arrogance and lack of discipline. Refusal of the call of conscience is by no means the same thing as irritation about undesirably low status. That rejection, that betrayal of the soul, is truly the requirement to perform demonstrably counterproductive, absurd, or pointless work, to treat others unjustly and to lie about it, to engage in deceit, to betray your future self, to put up with unnecessary torture and abuse, and to silently watch others suffer the same treatment. That rejection is the turning of a blind eye and the agreement to say and do things that betray your deepest values and make you a cheat at your own game. And there is no doubt that the road to hell, personally and socially, is paved not so much with good intentions as with the adoption of attitudes and undertaking of actions that inescapably disturb your conscience. Do not do what you hate.